Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do another mixed haul, as per usual. Stuff keeps piling up, and I keep shelving it after watching it, or reading it, or going on to put it off my desk so I have room to do other things. Um, so this one shouldn't be too long. There's a good amount of stuff here, but I think we can breeze through it pretty quickly. All right. Okay. So what should we do first? Let's do some books first. All right. So here we have. Zeno's Conscience. Now, this is an Everyman library. It's number, I speak constantly about the Everyman library. This one's number 249 in the collection. It's, if you hear me coughing a bit, I'm just getting over a cold, so I apologize. So this is number 249 in the collection, the modern edition of the Everyman library, not the original 1000, but the reinventing of it back in the early 90s. And this is volume, what did I say, 249 in it. So this is called Zeno's Conscience, and it's by Italian writer Italo Svevo. All right, it was published back in the 1920s, if I remember correctly. And it's basically a faux autobiography. It's basically this guy was seeing a psychoanalyst. The psychoanalyst told him to write down his history, and then he cancels the psychoanalyst's services. So the psychoanalyst takes his writings and publishes it. I don't know, as a revenge or something. I'm not sure. But anyways, you know it's about the guy's life, about how he started and quit smoking, about his wife, the death of his parents, and all this other kind of stuff. It's supposed to be pretty good. I have not read it, but when I found it online, and it was a volume that I didn't have, there's, I think, just over 400 volumes so far in the Everyman library, the modern version of it. And I probably maybe have 150 of them so far, maybe 200 of them. So maybe I'll be able to finish that whole thing before I'm dead, but probably not. Speaking of the original Everyman library, here's a Mr. Midshipman Easy by Marriott. All right, and this was written in the 1860s, I think it was. And this one is number 82 in the original collection. If you see it right there, it says number 82. So these are like pocketbook size hardcovers that were meant, that are sold in Great Britain and then exported to Canada and the United States to be like a cheap version of a novel or a book of some important book, so that your everyman, your everyday guy could afford reading. Right? Don't have to be part of the aristocracy or part of the upper class in order to afford to buy books and read. So these became extremely popular, and I have probably about, I don't know, maybe 200 of them. There's 1,000 in the series, right? This one is number 82. I did not have number 82. But these are all these started being published back in the early 1900s, and this is probably the one, two, three, maybe the third or the fourth version of it, because originally they were even smaller than this. But then they expanded their size, and this one is one of the later volumes that they keep republishing, right? The book itself is about uh, uh, a boy, a 17-year-old boy named Easy, and he had a father who's like a landowner, but he's kind of like an egalitarian type of guy. Anyways, his son joins the Navy at 17, and he kind of takes over his father's way of thinking until he ends up meeting a gentleman on board a ship, and kind of changes his mind a bit. If I remember correctly, I haven't read this book in years. Anyways, he goes back to his father's estate and then takes over and becomes like a non-egalitarian type of guy after that. Once he comes into once he sees what treating everybody as equals does to his father's property and how people are not living up to their end, and started to become like a pretty nasty landlord, kicking people off out of their places and everything if they didn't pay their rent and stuff. So, anyways, it's one of the better novels of the 19th century, but I picked it up mostly because it's part of the Everyman library. And here's another collection that I collect, and this is the Modern Library. Now, these are the Modern Library Giants. This is G29. There's just over 100 volumes in this library. Um, this one is The History of the Conquest of Mexico and the History of the Conquest of Peru by William H. Prescott. Now, Prescott was a British guy, an English guy, if I remember, maybe it's Scottish. Anyways, um, he was practically blind, but he ended up specializing in Spanish history, and he wrote a bunch of books about the Spanish royals, and two books on their the Spanish adventures into the New World and what happened there. So this is uh, one of the best books on that history. All right. What else do we have here? We have Frank Dune Messiah. If you haven't read Dune and you're a fan of science fiction, then you need to read Dune. It's one of the greatest science fiction novels of all time. Um, Actually, there's 6 books in the series, but you could just really read the first one. But if you plan on reading more of them, then you got to kind of read 2 to 5. Sorry, 2 to 6. And this is the second one in the series. So Dune introduces you to everybody, and about the spice and the monetary value of spice and all that. And then this one kind of moves on, and you have another 4 books after this that you can read in the series. I found this at a thrift store for like $1, and it's like brand new. So um, I read the first book in the series, and I didn't have an interest in reading the rest of them. I didn't want to put the commitment in. So all right, so what else do we have? All right, we have Billy Joel's "An Innocent Man," and I found this at a thrift store for $2, and I picked it up. I'm not a huge Billy Joel fan, but I do like this album because this was one of the first CDs I purchased when I was living on my own um, back in my early 20s, and I was chasing a girl, and the girl, had a bad experience with a previous boyfriend, and she was like gun shy about getting involved with me. And it's funny, and then I heard "An Innocent Man" on the radio, and I went, "Wow, that describes me to a T at this point or time in my life, right?" And so I went and I picked up the CD. I hadn't seen it since then. I used to listen to it all the time. Actually, it wasn't a CD; it was a tape. I would listen to on my Walkman. So I saw this and I said, "Hey, I don't have this Billy Joel album, so I'll pick it up." And it's the one with "An Innocent Man" and "Uptown Girl," "Careless Talk," "Keeping the Faith," "Leave a Tender Moment Alone." Anyways, he's a great artist, and you can't really go wrong with most of his albums. All right, what else do we have here on CD? Okay, we have "Light Your Light" by Toots and the Maytals. Maytals. Other than probably Bob Marley, these guys are what? They're kind of like a ska version. Rock steady. Reggae, and they're one of the big names. So if you like reggae, if you like Bob Marley, you want a little bit of a difference. I mean, these guys have been around just as long as Bob Marley has, and this one came out in 2007. So, but they have a whole history of albums that you can pick up, and they're really good at reggae music. All right. All right. So next we have is Nabokov's look at the Harlequins. All right. So this I think his last novel. Um, he was in the United States by then. By then, it's an English language novel. He speaks German. Sorry, he speaks Russian. He speaks French, I think, as well, right? And but I think he wrote this one in English. And I think this was his last novel before his death. I think he died in the late 70s, right? Yeah, copyright 1974. So it was one of his last novels. I don't know much about it because I haven't read it, so I won't go very deeply in it. But Nabokov is, one of the great Russian American writers. So, and then there's Things Change, a David Mamet now DVD, which is the reason why I picked it up. I have not seen this film yet, so I'm gonna bring it upstairs and watch it, and then I'll review it in a later video. All right. All right. What else do we have here? Nathan for You, the complete series on DVD. This is basically what? It's kind of like, well, he's a Canadian. What's his name? Nathan. What's his last name? Nathan Fielder, the Canadian dude. Anyway, so this is kind of like a docu-comedy. It's kind of like a documentary, faux documentary slash kind of comedy. Lasted for 4 seasons on Comedy Central. And it's basically about entrepreneurship and him giving advice, sometimes crazy advice, to people in business to become successful. So it's quite funny if you haven't watched it. So that's Nathan for You. All right. We did this one. We did this one. Okay, here's another one of the great science fiction novels of all time, and that's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Another series that you can read. There's a whole bunch of books in this series. I think there's 5 altogether, but don't quote me on that. Um, but just like Dune, I only read the first one, and I only read this one. This one made me laugh my ass off. Literally, it's quite funny. It's basically about a guy who is from planet Earth. He ends up on a ship after planet Earth is destroyed, and he ends up coming into possession uh, of a book or I think it was a book, if I remember correctly. It wasn't like a digital thing. On It's called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, on how to get around and what restaurants to go to and what places to visit and so on and so forth. And it's his adventures out in space after the destruction of his home planet. Right? It's very, 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 very good. A lot of genre books, like let's say, like a potboiler or a science fiction book or maybe a fantasy novel, or they don't really. A lot of the times they don't really get the respect that they deserve. But if I was to put, let's say, like a 500 book, the greatest 500 books of all time in a list, this definitely would be in that list. It is extremely good. All right. Um, did we do that one? We did this one. What else do we have here? Party Down. Okay, so Party Down was one season, and then they brought it back for a second short season, and then I think this year they're putting out a third season of it. But basically, it's like years between the seasons, right? So, because these guys, like what's her name? She was in Glee at the time, so she had difficulty doing this and Glee at the same time, I think. And there was another dude that's in a park and recreation as well, if I remember correctly. But anyways, it's called Party Down. It's basically about this California Hollywood catering business that had all these people in it, and they're all like, wannabe actors, out of work actors, and they're doing this job in order to, make ends meet when they pursue their career, type of thing. And it's supposed to be pretty funny, but I have not seen it, so I may watch it. I'm not sure. Um, and here's Gulliver's Travels, and this is part of the Modern Library, which is another one. So you had the Modern Library Giants that I showed you that had over 100 volumes. Well, this one, the Modern Library, is a direct competition to the Everyman Library. It came out a few years after the Everyman Library, and this is British. All right, this is from the UK. This one is American. The Modern Library is American. They're direct competitors back in the early 1900s, going up all the way to the 1970s, right? And then these guys kind of shut down. This one hit its 1,000 volume and stopped. I think that was in the mid 70s. And this one hit 800 and something volumes. Although the numbering on it is a bit different because they tend to reuse numbers as books they've put out and published that aren't selling, and they get replaced by another different book. They'll reuse the numbers. So I think there's just over 800 volumes in this series of books of the Modern Library, the original Modern Library. Um, but you may only get 400 and something numbers, right? So they're a little bit more difficult to find whether you have all of them or not if you don't get a reference book for them, right? So, all right, so that's Gulliver's Travels, which is basically one of the greatest satire books of all time, about the guy who goes to ends up on Lilliput with the little guys and gets tied down, and it goes on from there. Um, so that's one of Swift's greatest novels. And here's Dostoevsky's greatest novel, Crime and Punishment, about Raskolnikov, how he thinks he's above everybody else. He's one of the great men, like kind of described by Nietzsche, where there's some men that don't have the same morals because they don't need them because they're greater than other men. They just out outshine them, and so he ends up committing a murder, thinking that he would have no worry about it, wouldn't disturb his conscience, but he was quite wrong. And then you go on from there. The guilt and everything else in this novel, extremely good. All right, if you have not read Russian literature, read this book first. All right, what else do we have? I think that's all the book. No, okay. So then I found these two, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility, in these nice black hardcover volumes that have a like an elastic bookmark. So you put it around, and then it holds the book closed. Then you open it, and then when you're reading, let's say you've read up to this page, well, then you just take it and you go around like this, and then you close it like that, and then it's referenced on where you last was reading, right? So they're nice volumes, and Jane Austen is a good selling author, and Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice are two of her greatest works, and I think I'll be able to resell those pretty easily. All right, is there anything else I'm missing here when it comes to books? All right, so that's everything for books and TV shows, I think. All right, so let's do some of the great stuff, the good stuff that I got. All right. Actually, no, let's leave that to last. Let's do some more CDs. These are the CDs I've listened to in my car over the last few weeks. We got Daft Punk, probably their greatest album. This is the one with what's the name of that? One More Time. Which when you if you bought this record or album originally and you listen to the that One More Time song is pretty catchy, right? So these guys are kind of like electric dance. If you haven't heard of them before, and they're very good. All right, I wouldn't put them. I mean, some people just like give them the accolades that perhaps, in my opinion, they don't deserve that high of accolades because a lot of people really enjoy this music. I think it's good, but I think there's a lot better EDM music out there than this or whatever, right? So, but that One More Time song, became super famous through, what was America's Got Talent with the dude with the hair that goes out there and, has these, safety vests on, he rips them off or whatever. Uh, you know, uh, he had that as his song for his performance, and I don't know if that really pushed Daft Punk over the top, but now when I listen to this album, I can't help but think of that guy rather than the song without that guy on America's Got Talent. So I think he won the whole thing too, didn't he? Didn't he win that year? The $1 million or whatever. Anyway, so Daft Punk, if you like electronic music. Then we got Duke Ellington and Count Basie together for the first time. All right. This is an old Columbia jazz masterpiece where they took all the old records and they put them on CD. So they all have this kind of bluish purple border around them. So anytime you're out searching for youth CDs and you see this purple border, it's some of the great stuff that came out from Columbia during the heyday of jazz, back in the 60s, the 70s, and that kind of thing, right? 50s, even back to the 30s, really, I think. But Duke Ellington and Count Basie are two of the great names in early jazz. So you can't go wrong with that. I listened to that. I quite enjoyed it. Here's Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians, Stranger Things. All right, this one came out in 2006, and they had a couple albums back in the 80s, late 80s, mid to late 80s that were extremely good. So when I saw this in the used thrift store or whatever, I picked it up to see how it was, and it was quite enjoyable. If you like that mid-tempo music where it's not fast and it's not slow, and it sings about life. It's it's quite good for that. Then I have a bunch of. Make sure we got. Okay, so I got three more. So I got um, Antarctica, which is this is a another soundtrack to a movie soundtrack that Vangelis did. So you have this one. You have say Blade Runner is another one. Chariots of Fire is another one that he did. Um, and then you have Voices. All right, and then you have Direct. All right, so I don't distinguish a lot of the albums with Vangelis. He's put out quite a few, but I've never come across a Vangelis album that isn't just outstanding. Um, he's an electronic genius, music genius. He's up there with Kraftwerk when he came after Kraftwerk. He's a Greek musician, but he's really famous for doing great soundtracks, and his albums themselves are great. He kind of takes a bit of the aesthetic of classical music, but then does it electronically and updates it and brings it into the modern world. And a lot of his stuff is great, and some of it has vocals to it, a lot of it doesn't, and it's extremely good, mellow kind of electronic music. Do you like that? That you can't go wrong with Vangelis. Just outstanding, outstanding musician. All right, Ry Cooder's Chicken Skin music. All right, Ry Cooder is what? He's like a New Yorker, wasn't he? Anyways, he's a great guitarist. He's probably one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Has a fake eye throughout most of his life. That didn't really hinder him in playing music. And he's kind of like, well, he's eclectic. He's all over the field, but probably his core is like, blues and, like bluesy rock music. And his stuff is really good if you have not heard of him. He's been around since like the 60s, right? So, um, and then you have Canadian. Well, I think he's Scottish, actually. I think he was born in Scotland, but he's Canadian to everybody who's Canadian because, he grew up in Toronto, in the Toronto area, right? And this, I think, is his third album. The one before this, Strange Animal, is probably his signature album. It's the great one that has, Strange Animal and the Criminal one. What the hell was the name of that one? Anyways, it's a real dark song. So, and this one he came out after, and this one has the Moonlight Desires on it. If you haven't heard Moonlight Desires, it's extremely good um, song as well. This doesn't stand up as good as Strange Animal, but Criminal Mind is the name of the song. The other one that I was telling you about, A Criminal Mind. All right. And this one came after that album, that amazing album. This one did well as well, but then after that, he kind of went back into obscurity. But for two albums, Gowan is extremely good. All right. Uh, is that? I think that's all of. Yep. Okay. So now we'll do movies. All right. Usually this is the highlight of each of these videos is the movies. So which ones will we do first? All right. Because I found some really good stuff. All right. How about this one? All right. So here we have Schwarzenegger's Total Recall. All right. In a Mondo Steelbook. All right. And it's new. It hasn't been opened yet. Right. Problem is I can hear the disc rattling around inside, so I'm probably going to open it up. But these Mondo Steelbooks are like quite sought after in the secondary market. You can get them for a pretty good price and new. And I picked this up. I found this for like $10. So uh, one of Schwarzenegger's best films on a nice Steelbook Blu-ray. Um, it's a Best Buy exclusive. All right, and I found it for $10. Not so bad, right? If you haven't seen Total Recall, um, I don't want to confuse. There are so many Schwarzenegger films. Total Recall. Uh, yeah, it's the one where he's a secret agent and he doesn't know he's a secret agent. There was a remake with what's his name, the Irish guy. Anyways, I got to stop bringing up names that I can't remember, right? Anyway, so he's married to, I think it was Sharon Stone, if I remember correctly, and he's living his life, but he seems like his job isn't what he's supposed to be doing. He has this thing in the back of his head that he should be doing something greater, and the reason why is because he's actually like a super spy guy or whatever, and his mind had been erased through this process that people kind of go to go on vacation without having to go anywhere. All right, so it's quite a fun film. Even the remake is really good as well, with Colin Farrell. That's his name. Colin Farrell does a pretty good job with Total Recall, the remake of the film. But the original Total Recall is quite good, and I got it on Mondo Steelbook, so you can't beat that, can you? All right, what else do we have? All right, and then I also found this, an Edward Scissorhands Steelbook, new as well. They both still have their J cards, all right, and I can finally put an end. Well, probably not, but you never know. Whenever I like doing my collecting, this is one of my all-time favorite films, and it's probably my favorite Tim Burton film. Basically about Edward Scissorhands, who's a young man who has scissors for hands and is amazing at haircuts and trimming bushes and stuff like that. Anyways, it's quite a strange film, which a lot of the films with Johnny Depp and Tim Burton are. All right, so they they they've had a relationship over their career like few director actors have had, right? So um, and but I found it in a nice steelbook. And this is a Best Buy exclusive, and originally it was $12.99. The guy never opened it, right? But anyways, I got this for like $10, so not too bad. And but what I was saying is I bought this on the DVD, just regular DVD, and then they have this special thick anniversary DVD version of it. So then I ended up picking up that, and then I found it on a nice Blu-ray, so I picked it up on that, and now I picked it up on a Blu-ray steelbook. So I'm always improving. So I go, okay, this will probably be the last time I buy this. But then, of course, if they come out with a 4K version of this on steelbook, then I'll probably pick that up as well if I can find it used at a reasonable price. But it's one of the great films, and it's probably Tim Burton's greatest film. All right. So next up is I found this 4K Ultra HD only at Walmart limited edition Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. All right. So I have all the other films, um, but I did have this one, and this one is new too. And I found this for $5. So um, new. All right. So if you notice, it has some extra stuff inside. So that's pretty cool. And then I also found this 4K, also new, and it's glass. It's the second in the three M Night. How do you say his last name? Shyamalan. I'm sorry, Mr. Knight, for brutalizing your name. So basically, you had what? Unbreakable, then you have this glass, and then you have the third film. So I found this one on 4K, so that's kind of cool. I will upgrade because I do have the Blu-ray to this. What else here? Okay, and I also found this one, which is a new copy of The Warriors on Steelbook Blu-ray as well. All right, still with its J card as well because it's new, right? And this is one of my all-time favorite films, basically about the Warriors, which is a gang in New York from Coney Island, and there's this big, huge meeting of all the gangs in New York in the Bronx, and so uh, the largest gang in New York calls all the other gangs together on a truce so that he can have a talk with them in in the Bronx and maybe get them all together to run the whole of New York City, right? So, uh, but then this crazy guy, ends up shooting the leader, and then it's blamed on the warriors, and now the warriors have to, fight their way from the Bronx all the way back to Coney Island, with every gang in the city looking for them to, kill them for killing Cyrus was the name of the gang leader that wanted to run the whole city, right? So um, it's quite fun. It's quite cartoonish. Walter Hill, who's the director, um, thought of it like a comic book version of the old story after the Trojan War. You had all those gladiators stuck in Persia or wherever, and then they have to fight their way back to Sparta. Those 300 Spartans or whatever, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so he kind of bases that storyline on that, but he does it more of a cartoon version in a futuristic kind of New York City, right? So you have all these different gangs that all dress up in all these different colors, and you have like a good example would be the Baseball Furies, which are these guys right here. You see it, right? The Baseball Furies. Right? They all dress up in baseball uniforms with painted faces, right? And anyways, it's all cartoonish, but it's quite fun. It's quite a fun movie to watch. I've watched it dozens of times, and now I have a really nice version of it on Blu-ray. And I'll pick up the 4K if it ever comes out on 4K. But this is a nice Blu-ray Steelbook, so that's pretty cool. Um, and the last of the Steelbooks, I think. Yeah, I think the last of the Steelbooks. Here's 4K. Indiana Jones, all four Indiana Jones films on 4K Steelbook. All right, so you got Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, The Last Crusade, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, all in one nice package. Although this outside package is pretty flimsy. All right, but overall, you got four Steelbooks in one package. I'm going to protect it, but the guy didn't protect it when he had it. And look at that; it's got that nice little rip down there at the bottom, right, already, because the outside package is pretty flimsy. Uh, the artwork and everything on the on the steelbooks is really nice, right? That one, that's kind of cool, right? That one with the Ark of the Covenant on the back of it, really nice. It's a really nice set, but the packaging is kind of flimsy. They could have did way better for the packaging around the steelbooks. So, but I will protect them. Alrighty. Um, all the films are great. The first one obviously was probably the best. Although if you were a fan of The Big Bang Theory, kind of what's her name, Sheldon's girlfriend there, kind of ruined it for a lot of people, where they said that even though Indiana Jones was the main person in the film, the whole film wouldn't have changed it in any way if you took Indiana Jones out of the film, right? So, um, the Nazis still would have found the Ark of the Covenant, still would have opened it, still would have all died, and all that, but there wouldn't be as much adventure involved in it, right? So, but anyway, so you have the all four films, all on nice 4K Steelbook Blu-ray, and I found that 40. I found that for $40, 35 or $40. All right, so not too bad. All right, then we got the Alfred Hitchcock Masterpiece series of Blu-rays. All right, and this one is Torn Curtain, which basically stars Paul Newman and Julie Roberts. Paul Newman is a scientist in it, where he defects to East Berlin because he was working on a nuclear missile defense system um, that the American government decided that they didn't want to fund anymore. So he ended up defecting over to the Russian side or East German side to work with this Russian scientist uh, to put it into effect, and what it'll do is it'll just make nuclear bombs, obsolete or whatever, right? So, uh, but what he is actually doing is he's pretending to defect. He's actually an undercover agent for the CIA or whatever, and is looking to get the actual working information for this system from this Russian scientist who's smarter than him or whatever, right? And actually figured it out, right? So it's a great espionage film, and Paul Newman does a very good job in it. All right, next up after that is the Blu-ray of Alexander, uh, the final cut, Alexander Revisited, basically about Alexander the Great, the son of Philip, taught by Aristotle, and he took over most of the ancient Greek world and you know parts of Africa and everywhere else. And Colin Farrell doesn't do a bad job on this, and Angelina Jolie plays his mother, and the main purpose of me watching this was Rosario Dawson was in this. She's one of my favorite actresses, and I didn't know until I watched it that she has a major nude scene in it with Colin Farrell that um, I didn't realize was in it. And I went, interesting. But the film itself is not very good. All right, it was directed by Oliver Stone, but it was too drawn out and was too. I don't know. It didn't have the, let's say, something like a. It didn't have the emotional connection like a Braveheart or something like that. So it kind of got dry um, after a while. So I actually stopped watching it. We got Tom Hanks's Bridge of Spies, directed by Steven Spielberg. I had this on DVD, but now I have it on Blu-ray. This is basically about um, Tom Hanks. I just watched this, and now I forget what it's about. Right? Uh, yes, he's a lawyer. Tom Hanks is a lawyer, and he ends up um, they catch a spy, a Russian spy in the United States, and he goes about negotiating with the Russians and the East Germans because they had captured uh, an American fighter pilot and a student that got caught behind the Berlin Wall when the Berlin Wall went up, right? So they do an exchange, and it's about that. It's kind of like based on a true story, and they exchange this Russian spy for these two Americans, right? So, and up after that is uh, Nicholas Stroller's Neighbors with Seth Rogen and what's this guy's name? Zac Efron? Is it Zac Efron? Yeah, Zac Efron. Basically, they're neighbors. He's an older guy who has a new baby and a wife, and he's part of a fraternity that move in next door, and then they clash. It's okay. It's not the greatest film of all time, but um, I decided to pick it up just to see how it is. After that is Arrival. Oh yeah, so this is Arrival, starring Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forrest Whitaker. All right, this is basically about aliens coming to visit Earth. All right, and she's a linguist and translator. She speaks a bunch of different languages and everything. And he's a scientist. And basically, this is a curiosity film more than an action. There isn't much action in this film. It's not like a like an Independence Day or something like that. No, they come down and there's a playing with time involved in this that you get to understand by the end of the film. And it's directed by Canadian Denis Villeneuve, and so that's the reason why I picked it up was because of him. I collect him as a director, so I quite enjoyed it actually, and not a lot happened in it. All right, and it was more of like a figure out. You kind of could use your imagination or just watch the movie on how plausible maybe that might be um, if aliens ever do come. You can picture this kind of thing going on rather than that Independence kind of day of reckoning and all that kind of stuff that happened with that Roland Emmerich film. But it's fun to watch. It was an action film, right? So this one's kind of more cerebral. Right now we got Brad Pitt's Killing Them Softly. All right, this is basically a gang uh, film, like a mafia film or whatever. And Brad Pitt does a really good job in it. Has Ray Liotta in it, and what's his name from The Sopranos. And basically, I'm not going to ruin the story for you because explaining it would just basically kill it. There'd be no reason why you would watch this film, so I won't do it. It's directed by who directed this? Andrew Dominic. All right, so Andrew Dominic directed that. I had it on DVD, but I didn't have it on Blu-ray, so now I do. And next up is a Big Tits Zombie. All right, this is a zombie film. Back when I was watching a bunch of films, I got into the B films coming out of Japan, and this was one of them that crossed my view. Uh, Basically, she's like a porn actress, but this film isn't porn. It's basically a horror uh, film with zombies, right? It's really low budget and it's really low cut, but it's quite fun to watch. And there's a bunch of CGI in it rather than real blood in some scenes and everything. It's kind of cheesy, uh, but I got into this kind of film back in the early 2000s, watching a bunch of these films. So I've actually found it on DVD. There is no Blu-ray version or 4K version of this. It wasn't popular enough. Then we got Enemy at the Gates. This was a really good film, all right, directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud, all right. And this is basically taking place during World War One or no, World War Two, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and basically it's about two snipers, one played by Ed Harris and the other one is played by Jude Law, and they go up against each other. And it was a lot more interesting than I thought it would be. And maybe you will think that too. But basically, about a German Nazi sniper against an American sniper or British sniper, and they go at it. All right, and then I haven't watched that film, so I don't know why I brought that. I haven't finished watching it. I mean, then we got Matt Damon and Christian Bale in Ford versus Ferrari. This is basically about racing and how Ferrari was kicking everybody's ass during the racing period during this time, and Ford was losing share in the American market and decided to get into racing and create a Ford race car, and how they ended up conquering. It's not NASCAR, but whatever the racing organization was at the time. They kind of put it to Ferrari and beat them, right? So it's a quite good film. I really enjoyed it. It's directed by James Mangold, all right? So I found it on DVD. I haven't found it on Blu-ray yet, all right? This one also, I found it on DVD. I would like to get on Blu-ray, and that's The Mule, starring Clint Eastwood, directed by Clint Eastwood, if I remember. Yeah, produced and directed and stars Clint Eastwood. Basically, he's an older man who decides to become a drug mule for for the cartel or whatever, and he drives this truck from one place to another, um, with the back of it filled with drugs, and it gets more and more complicated as the film goes along, right? And it's quite a good film. I really enjoyed it. Right? So that's The Mule. And then we have BBC's Doctor Who, Christopher Eccleston's and David Tennant's Doctor Who. So both of them, um, all their shows or episodes of Doctor Who on DVD in this one nice package, right? 12 disc set. I have not watched these Doctor Who's. The only Doctor Who's I really watched, I watched the first, like the original Doctor Who, back at the black and white Doctor Who, the original first Doctor Who. I watched a few of those episodes, but I kind of got bored of it. The Tom Baker is the Doctor Who that I know most about, and I really enjoyed his series of playing Doctor Who. But after he left, I kind of left the series as well, and I tried to watch the whole thing, but I did watch the first episode in this one, and it didn't impress me much. So I probably won't watch this series, but we'll see. Um, but it has all of them, and then we have Salma Hayek and Everly. This is directed by Joel Lynch. I don't collect Joel Lynch as a director, but I really, really enjoy films where the lead star in an action film is a woman, and Salma Hayek has that, electricity when you watch her on screen, right? This is basically about her fighting everybody. It's quite a fun film if you haven't watched it. So if you like women who kick ass on film, this is Salma Hayek's version of her kicking ass. And here, I collect these on DVD, even though it's kind of going into the horror legacy series. There's a whole bunch of them. They all have these sleeves to them, and they're all classic horror films over the decades, right? This one is Near Dark, all right. So when I saw this in a thrift store, I said, "Oh, cool, I'll pick it up." But what I didn't realize is, and you need to do this when you go to thrift stores. What I didn't realize is that there was no disc in it. All right, so that kind of killed that. I did not have Near Dark as a film either, so um, but I'd like to get all the Horror Legacy on DVD films. I think I have like 4 or 5 of them presently, but this is kind of crap now because it doesn't have the disc to it, right? So, and that's everything. All right, so we did it pretty quickly. All right, so if you saw anything you liked, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing, and I would appreciate it. And I'll see you in my next video, and you have a great day. All right, so bye for now.